Yo, what is going on, everybody? It's Jonathan back again with the weekly Scuffle. Today I'm doing a mock draft. The season's over, playoffs are about to start, and I wanted to just get on here and do a quick mock draft and just see what teams could possibly do. I love mocks. I love the draft itself. Ever since I was a kid, whenever I got into a sport, whether basketball or football, I always loved the draft. Just because, fresh blood, fresh faces, and new people and new careers to start, new legacies to start building. With that being said, let's get into this video. I'm gonna try to make it a quick little mock draft, nothing major. But with this first selection, I think they go with the best player available. I think Kayvon Thibodeau is just a natural talent. I do like Aiden Hutchinson's floor, but I think Kayvon Thibodeau has the higher ceiling, and I think that's what the Jaguars need to strive for, is just that high ceiling. And then we get Aiden Hutchinson. Everybody's saw his season at Michigan this year. Great season, honestly. And there's not much to say other than he's just a good prospect, one of the top prospects in this draft, and I think he's fit very good with Dan Campbell over there on the Lions. That's a nice pick for them right there. And then next, we have the Houston Texans. I think it's an interesting pick here because Kyle Hamilton is a very intriguing prospect for me. I very much like his potential at the safety, but I don't think teams will value the safety position that high. And then you have players like Derek Stingley, Ike Mekwanu, you have Evan Neal. But I don't think this team really needs an Evan Neal. They have Laramie Tunsil. So I think I'll give them Derek Stingley Jr., even though I believe he was injured most of last year. I think he's still a can't miss prospect at the top of this draft, especially at corner. Corner always goes to the top, so I think he definitely would go there. And now with the Jets, this is an interesting spot for them. A lot of people like Kwanu, but I think I like Evan Neal here. I think he's the bigger prospect, if I'm not mistaken. He's 6'6", 360, according to Draft Network, while Kwanu is 6'4", 320. So if you need to move Neal to guard, you could do that, or possibly just start him at tackle. You have two decent tackles. I mean, you have used they've used a lot of capital on this draft, on draft targets in tackles and other positions on the O line, but Zach Wilson needs that protection. Get them Evan Neal, you know. Then now for the Giants, I like right here George Kalafdis. I think he's a solid edge rusher. I think the Giants need defense and basically almost every position. Not really, but the Giants definitely need to reassess this team going forward and you know draft smartly and draft properly. And here is actually where I think the first QB gets picked, and I think the QB will be Kenny Pickett. I've seen a lot of mocks where Matt Corral goes first or some other people go first. I am a fan of Kenny Pickett. I think he's a big receiver with natural talent, and I think the Panthers are a solid team. They got solid weapons. Their O line isn't horrible. They could use upgrades on the O line for sure, but I think Kenny Pickett is a solid guy that could sit for a year, and you could develop him, and he could become a solid QB in this league for sure. Next, we have the Giants. I'm very tempted to take a QB here. Not gonna lie, I'm not sure exactly what the Giants are going to do, but I'm gonna give Daniel Jones the benefit of the doubt, and I think they'll take Ike Mekwanu. I think it's a good tackle prospect still in this draft, and I think it's a solid selection. If they get a tackle for the future and an edge for the future, that solidifies their team a lot. And now we have the Atlanta Falcons, which this is an interesting spot because they were close to making the playoffs, but they didn't. And you gotta start asking questions whether you think they should take a QB or whether they shouldn't take a QB. Honestly, this is a very interesting spot for me. I like a lot of the people here, but I think they'll go with Kyle Hamilton. I don't necessarily think the defense is up to par to what they like it to be. I think they had AJ Terrell play very good at corner, and I think Kyle Hamilton could be a very good safety. Imagine having AJ Terrell and Kyle Hamilton in that secondary. That would be insane. And I think that gives the defense a good little boost. So I'll definitely take Kyle Hamilton there. And then for the Broncos, I think this is a QB spot for sure. I think QB is definitely something that needs to be taking here. And me personally, I'm a fan of Matt Corral. I think Matt Corral and Sam Howell are like the same player, and I do like both of them. But I also like Desmond Ridder. I like his natural ability. I like Carson Strong's natural ability, but I feel like he's definitely more raw than Desmond Ridder, so I'll take Desmond Ridder over him. And if we're going simply based off potential, Malik Willis is always a QB to look at. But for this, I do believe they will go Desmond Ridder. I don't think Carson Strong, even though it makes sense, especially for the Broncos, they like those big arm QBs. I think Desmond Ridder is a sneaky QB prospect in this draft. I think he could definitely rise up the board, especially with a team trying to fix him. He gives me a lot of Ryan Tannehill, Joe Burrow type vibes. I think he could. His legs are very underrated, and as long as he could work on that accuracy and getting the ball out quick, I think he'll be a very good QB, and I like that pick a lot. Next, we have the Jets again. The Jets need talent. That's not a question. And you got to think, what will the Jets do? Honestly, I think this is a very good spot for the Jets to take an edge rusher and David Ojabo. I've seen a little bit about David Ojabo, but I know he's a speed demon off the edge. He's a very fast linebacker slash edge hybrid, and I think he's good potential wise for the Jets. The Jets should just take best player available for the most part. I think this is a good spot for them to take David Ojabo for sure. And we have the football team, which we're not entirely sure what the new name is yet, but I do like Matt Corral for this spot. I'm not gonna lie, I do think he's a good spot, a good player in this spot for sure. But I don't think he moves the needle as much as Heineke. I think they're basically the same. And then you look at people like Jameson Williams, who tore his ACL, so I'm not entirely sure how that will impact his draft status. But I do believe Kenyon Green is actually a very good pick here. I like the Kenyon Green pick a lot for this team. I think just solidifying that O-line even more. It's already a solid O-line. But just making it a solid O-line and maybe look towards next year draft or towards free agency next year, because even this year's free agency class isn't that good. So I think Kenyon Green is a solid pickup here, that's for sure. And now we have the Vikings. For the Vikings, I'm definitely taking corner. My top corner in this class is actually Amal Gardner. I fell in love with his play. And I think Amal Gardner is a very good prospect. I don't think he gets the love he deserves. I think if he went to one of those big programs, he would definitely be at the top of this draft, similar to Derek Stingley. But Vikings fans may be tired of this mock, but I think it fits very much. So I'm taking Amal Gardner there. That's a pretty easy pick for me, if I'm going to be honest. And now we have the Browns. I think the Browns definitely go wide receiver here. I would love for them to take Jameson Williams, but with his ACL being torn now, I'm not entirely sure if they do. And I think a good pick for them is actually Chris Olave. I think Chris Olave is a solid player. So yeah, I think I might go Chris Olave here. I'm not entirely sure. I don't see anybody else that I kind of like the Drake London pick. You know what? I think actually Drake London would be a good pick for them. I think a big body receiver is something they could use. So I'm actually going to take Drake London for them. I think they could use that big body target for Baker. I think Baker's been playing with pretty small, shifty wide receivers for the majority of his career. So I think giving him a big body, big 50-50 ball guy, I think that could help him out a lot. And now we have the Baltimore Ravens. I think the Baltimore Ravens, they could honestly go Jordan Davis here. I know he played limited snaps, but this team isn't a team that necessarily needs a lot. But I think Jordan Davis is a value pick. I think they could definitely use him as a rotational piece, and a very good rotational piece is that. They have a solid D line. They were harmed with injuries and COVID this year, so I think this is a good pick for them. I think Jordan Davis is a solid pick, and it boosts them a lot. And now the Eagles. The Eagles have a lot of picks here, so it's very interesting to see what they'll do. I actually like a certain player here. I think Devin Lloyd just makes so much sense. I don't know if the Eagles will draft a linebacker, but Devin Lloyd definitely makes sense for them in my eyes. But we'll see. We'll see how it plays out during draft day. And I think wide receiver is definitely a need for them. I'm not entirely sure if they will take a wide receiver, if they still believe in Rieger or not. I actually like Jameson Williams here. I think he could be a solid pick for them. But it doesn't really matter. I think for them at this point, I think edge would definitely be in play. I'm not really seeing anybody I like here though. I actually like Drake Jackson. I think he's a good edge player, but I'm not necessarily sure if there's an edge here to take. So I think we'll go corner and we'll actually go Andrew Booth Jr. I actually really like him coming out of Clemson. I think he's a solid prospect, and I think it'll be a steal at this point in the draft, shoring up that defense and making a run for it, honestly. And actually, I think a corner goes again here for the Chargers. I think the Chargers try to like solidify that defense. We all know what happened with the Chargers and the Raiders, and the offense will always be elite, but that defense definitely needs work. And I think right here is actually a perfect spot for Kier Elam. I think he's a solid press man corner. I enjoy his play, especially as a Dolphins fan. We use press man corners all the time, and I think he'll be solid for the Chargers, and he'll look very good back there with Derwin James. This spot right here is definitely a QB spot in my eyes. I think it's actually a QB that I talked about earlier, but very, very slightly. And that QB is actually Malik Willis. I actually think they make this pick. I'm not gonna lie. I like this pick for them, but I'm gonna do the proper mock. And now who I like for them, but who I think they will take, and it's Matt Corral. I think Matt Corral will be their QB. I think Sean Payton will see Matt Corral and he'll be like, I could work with that. I could make him a good QB. And they'll take Matt Corral. I think that's a solid pick for them, regardless. And we'll see how it plays out. But I think Matt Corral is definitely someone that they could sign here or draft and have their team around. Their O line's already elite. They have weapons. Receiver could be in play, but I do like Matt Corral. I think he could sit for a year and then develop, and then Sean Payton will have his QB of the future. And then now, coming back to the Eagles for their third first round pick, which is beyond insane. But with that being said, I think they might go here. It's an interesting spot for them. I like a lot of the players available. I'm very much a fan of Linderbaum. Do they move on from Kelsey this year is a very interesting question that is yet to be answered, if we're being honest. And honestly, I think edge here makes a lot of sense. I do think it would be Drake Jackson, in my opinion. I like Drake Jackson more than most of these guys. I mean, I may not be super familiar with all these guys, but Drake Jackson has been at the top of my board for a while now. I'm a fan of him. Even if he slides to day two, I would love for my team to take him. That's very obvious. And there's a guy here, Malik Willis, who I actually think makes a lot of sense for the Steelers. I'm not sure if they would draft him, but I do think it makes a lot of sense. I think Malik Willis, honestly, is you look at him and I think Mike Tomlin sees, oh, this is the guy I could draft and have with that natural talent, running and passing, in order to compete with Lamar. I think that's what he truly sees. I think if I'm the Steelers, I'm looking at Malik Willis and I'm like, damn, we are amazing at drafting wide receiver. We draft this kid, we let him sit for a year maybe, or we let him start. I know they definitely need some O-line needs, but I think Malik Willis could start. I think they could draft O-line maybe in the second round, maybe sign some O-line, improve that way, and sign Malik Willis, let him develop for a little bit, and then go out the year after and go crazy with Malik Willis. I think he's a very good prospect, and I think that's the pick to make. And next we got cornerback. I think for the Patriots, I think they could use a corner. I think the corner they'll definitely use is Trent McDuffie. I think he's a solid corner. And the only other one, I'm not that familiar with Roger McCreary, but I like Trent McDuffie. I think he's a solid first round prospect. And I'll definitely have the Patriots taking him. And for the Dolphins, I'm torn right now because I like Chris Olave. I think him and Jalen Waddle could be great, especially if they stick with Tua, which it looks like with the Brian Flores firing. But my favorite player in the draft for the Dolphins is actually none other than Nakobe Dean. I think he's a excellent coverage linebacker, and I think the Dolphins take him. I think that's the best pick for the Dolphins. I think this makes our defense truly elite, regardless of who the coach is. I think that's the one position that is kind of questionable for the Dolphins. I think Nakobe Dean covers it, and it puts Jerome Baker back in a more blitzer type role, and it helps the team overall. So yeah, Nakobe Dean is definitely the pick for me. I wouldn't mind Chris Olave either. I think Dolphins could use more wide receivers, especially with the injuries that we've been dealing with and everything else that goes along with it. And now time for the Raiders pick. I think the Raiders actually go none other than DeMarvin Neal here for Texas A&M. He dropped a lot yet again. I took Jordan Davis at 14. I think Jordan Davis is a good pick for Baltimore simply because of how stacked they are. I don't think they belong in the 14th spot. But I think DeMarvin Neal, I think this is where he goes. This is a good spot for him. But the inside D line is usually not drafted as high. But we'll have to see. I think these two are definitely first round locks. And we'll see. And this is definitely a corner spot. I don't like much of these corners. I like Roger. Not a super huge fan of him. I think he's a bit small, but I think he's a good player. But here I think we go best player available, probably. I mean, do they need a tackle? Not really. Jameson Williams is a very interesting prospect for me. I think the Cardinals are definitely someone that could look at him and be like, oh yeah, I'll take him. But, it is what it is. I think, honestly, this might be a spot. You know what, actually? I think we will give them a corner. I think it makes so much sense here. I think even if they have to reach for a corner, they'll have to take one regardless, because that's really just a position they really need. So we'll give them Roger McCreary. And now for the Bengals. I think the Bengals were a surprise for a lot of people, including myself. But here, they get Charles Cross. This is actually a steal for them if this happens in the actual draft. Making the playoffs, making a run, and actually still getting a tackle, that would be insane for them. So Charles Cross, the pick to make for them. And here, the Bills, we have them. And I think, honestly, they get, where is inside O-line? I think they get Linderbaum here. I don't know if this happens in real life. I'm very high on Linderbaum. I would actually love for the Dolphins to take him. He's probably my number one pick over Nakobe Dean. But I don't know. They flip-flop here and there. And then Chris Olave is solidly lodged in at 3 for the Dolphins. But Linderbaum, he's a solid prospect. I doubt he falls as much in the draft. But, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think this is a Linderbaum take. And now for the Lions, I think wide receiver, definitely. They have Amon St. Brown, which was a nice surprise for them. I'm curious as to what would happen with Jameson Williams. I'm curious if teams would actually pass up on him in order to draft other guys, or if some team will take the chance on him, let him sit a year because of the ACL injury, and then let him come back. I think most likely he drops. So I'll actually have him taking Chris Olave here. I think he's an amazing wide receiver. Like I said, I would love the Dolphins to draft him. I think this is a good pick. Chris Olave, definitely the way to go. And I think that's the pick that's made here. And then here we have the Cowboys. The Cowboys are an interesting team. I think they definitely need defense more than anything. There's a lot of wide receivers left here. And I think the edge they take here is actually Travon Walker. I like him. I think he's a solid player. Not super familiar with him, but he's a solid player regardless. And I think they'll go with whatever defensive player is available here, most likely. I think their offense is set for the future. There's not that many holes on that offense. Maybe if you want to retool the O-line, but even then, I think right now, Travon Walker, solid pick for them. And now we have the Kansas City Chiefs. Honestly, this is another team where defense should definitely come into consideration before offense. But yet again, we have to look at this team for what it is. It's an offensive juggernaut for a reason. And I think Treylon Burks actually is my pick here. I like Burks. I think he's a big body receiver. Before I knew what the Dolphins were, I actually liked him at the beginning of the year. But I don't think the Dolphins need another 50-50 guy. That's why I prefer Chris Olave now. But Treylon Burks is definitely still a guy that I am a fan of. Big body receiver, 50-50 plays. He reminds me a lot of A.J. Brown. So imagine if the Chiefs had A.J. Brown. That would be disgusting. And that's what I'm taking for them. I think Treylon Burks will work wonders for them. And now we have none other than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which this team is actually very interesting because of the loss of Antonio Brown. I actually like Jameson Williams. I'm not going to lie. The injury just It's a big question mark. I'm not entirely sure how far he drops, if he drops out of the first round or not. But I will take Garrett Wilson just in case. This would probably be Jameson Williams. I just don't know NFL team stances on waiting a year for a player to get healthy. I know in the NBA, so they probably would have taken him regardless. But in the NFL, I think Garrett Wilson is the pick here. Regardless, I think either or, you have a solid wide receiver. Now the Titans, I think the Titans actually just go best player available. I actually wouldn't mind Jameson Williams here. I'm questioning still taking Jameson Williams strictly based on the fact that they could wait a year because Julio hasn't really panned out. AJ's been dealing with injuries. They have a couple other needs. But honestly, I think this Jameson Williams pick, I think you got Derrick Henry coming back. He's going to be back next year. I think they could afford to wait a year. So we'll see what actually happens in the draft. But I think Jameson Williams is definitely a pick here. And then we have, to end out the draft, I think this could be a wide receiver pick depending on how the draft plays out. I think wide receiver could definitely go here, especially if Devontae Adams is on the move after the season. But I do think right here the pick is, I believe, Trevor Penning. I like Trevor Penning. I think he's a big body, if I'm not mistaken. 6'7", 321. Big body tackle. Who doesn't love big body tackles? Because if anything, you can move them back to guard and they should produce at a high level. So yeah, I think Trevor Penning is definitely the pick here. Staying up north. And I think this is how the draft plays out. Honestly, this is my first mock. I think I might do another one, depending, not sure when. But honestly, this is a solid mock, I believe. I think a couple people could go higher, a couple people could go lower. It honestly depends. We don't know about the QBs in this class because there's always people are always jumping up for QBs. I think Hutchinson and Thibodeau are definitely safe as a top two, but I think the Texans are a question mark at 3. I don't think they value a tackle or even a corner this high. So maybe trading down, maybe with the Panthers if they want Kenny Pickett, or maybe if the Broncos want to jump the Panthers, move up to 3. Anything is possible. But with that being said, this is my first mock draft, well, second mock draft on the channel, and I think it's a solid mock. I like a lot how it played out, and we'll see what happens. Thank you guys for watching. With all that being said, see you next time. Peace.